Hey, Jason with Flowpack Pro. Just want to walk through the August release, talk about some of the features we delivered, and give some quick demos for a few of them. If you're ever curious about the latest release and what is in it, you can always access that on the documentation site, which is docs.flowpackpro.com. And in the left navigation bar, just go ahead and select the releases page. And with that, let's dive right into the August release. Probably September by the time you're watching this, or later, but this rolled out in August of 2022. So Visual Select, which is a tool for quickly making selections and advancing to the next screen in a flow, got native support for record types. So basically you put in the record type ID, pulls in the record types, automatically creates the selections, and pulls in the description as well. The data table component got a huge upgrade. We added inline editing, and we'll jump into a demo to take a look at that. There is an Upsert Action. So I know that's kind of a pain point for a lot of people. So you can now do upserts from a flow. And then those are the three that we'll be demoing today. And the ones that we will not demo are adding business hour support. So these are all actions that you can essentially calculate different times and time-based actions based upon the business hours defined in your instance of Salesforce. And then we also have the option, the action to parse a multi-select pick list field into a collection of variables or into a collection variable. Keeping this a little informal. I'm not going to edit, keep it more personable. We'll just roll with it. So let's just dive right into it. So visual select. Actually, let's do data table first. That's the most important kind of fun one. So I'll make myself smaller, get out of the way here. And so here is the data table component dropped right into a demo page. And Salesforce did recently come out with a data table component, but there are some pretty big differences between the data table in Flowpack Pro and the standard Salesforce data table. Standard Salesforce data table is great. If it works for you, awesome. If you need more functionality, here's a potential option. So some of the key differences before we dive into inline editing is name fields actually render as clickable links. Minor thing, but yeah, if you include a name field, you'll actually be able to navigate to the record. Address fields, if you click an address field, it'll open up in Google Maps and take you to the location. So in this case, Salesforce headquarters, downtown San Francisco. And yeah, just some minor differences there in terms of just like the out-of-the-box usability. But let's shift gears and talk about inline editing. So big change. So right off the bat, supports all data types. So we're talking pick list fields like we have here, multi-select fields, checkboxes, date fields, date time fields, multi-select pick list fields, and record type dependent pick list fields. So a lot of support here. If you need advanced inline editing, this is a great option. So I'll just switch this one to energy real quick. There's also a simple undo action here. So I can click that and immediately undo the action, or the edit that I made. So we'll just change this to engineering and walk through some of the other different fields we have here. So parent account, that's a lookup account. So lookup fields are also fully supported within the data table as well. So we'll change this one to global media, submit, and then we'll jump into some of the record type functionality. So this account here, Acme, has a record type of customer, and you can see global media has a record type of partner. And this pick list account type, the values are different based upon the record type. And so if I click on this one, you can see things that are a little bit more customer focused, analyst, competitor, customer, press, prospect. And then if I flip to global media, which is a partner account, this pick list is going to be a little bit different. So integrator, investor, partner, reseller. You can see here it's actually respecting the record type and only displaying the pick list values that are valid for that record type. And one thing to note too, you do not need to do anything to configure this. It just works. Just add your record collection to the table, we will automatically grab the right record type and render these fields accordingly. Just drop it in and it works. And then certainly not, excuse me, last but certainly not least is multi-select support in a data table. So you can see here, products used, pretty simple list, but fridge, TV, oven, kind of made up that field. It's nothing fancy. Submit, and then we'll go ahead and save. And just like that, super fast, all the records have been saved. So that is inline editing. And I'm actually had the flow here to talk about, but it's really nothing more than a get records action. And the data table itself, you just drop in a true variable here for enable inline editing, pass in the record collection, and that is it. There's nothing else you need to do to enable inline editing. And with that, well, let's jump over to the next demo, which is visual select for record type. So visual select, if you're not familiar, is a very simple and quick way for users to make a selection and optionally automatically advance to the next step in the flow. So here I've dropped that visual select component into my screen. There's a custom editor here to kind of give you a preview of what this will look like for the users. And so in this case, I select the options source is an object field. And the object we're actually going to be pulling from is account. And the field name is record type ID. So when we put in record type ID, Flowpack Pro will automatically go grab all of the record types and pre-fill these selections for you. It will also automatically fill in the description. The only thing you have to do is optionally enter an icon here, and you're good to go. One thing I also wanted to note in the demo, I did turn on this next on select option. So what this does is as soon as a user clicks on one of the items in the visual select, the flow will automatically advance to the next step. So a bit of a time saver, makes your flows easier to use for your end users. So that's what the flow looks like. And let's jump back to the demo and see what it looks like here. And this is what it looks like when it renders. So we've got the two options here to choose a record type, and we'll just go ahead and go with partner. And as soon as I click this, you will see that it automatically advances to the next step in the flow and lets me know the record ID that was selected. You could then use this in subsequent steps in your flow. And what do we got? The last one here is the Upsert Action. So let's go ahead and close the record type one and talk about the Upsert Action. So before we dive into the flow, let's just look at the demo really quick. So I've got two inputs here, account name and an external ID. So I'm going to say new account, give it an external ID of 1. And all this is doing is essentially creating an account within the flow and upserting that. So if we go to the account list here and I refresh this, you will see these are all the accounts in the system and there is nothing that's called new account. So let's go ahead and say next. And you can see that it actually navigated to the account automatically upon flow completion. And I'll talk about that and how that works in just a moment. But you can see that if we go back to the account tab and kind of refresh it, you can see there's a new account here called new account, and it has an external ID of 1. So if we go back to our demo page, go back to Upsert Action, and we'll call this an account with a new name. So we're really kind of changing the name. We're going to give it a external ID of 1. And now because this account already exists in the system, it's actually going to update it instead of insert it. And so if we hit next here, it will go to the next page and you can see there it is, an account with a new name. And if we go back here and refresh this list view, you can see that no new account was created, but simply the account name was updated because the external ID already existed. So a lot of cool use cases for the upsert operation. I hope people find that useful. And now let's dive into exactly how this upsert works. So pretty simple. you have a screen that really just captures two input fields. They're both text, nothing fancy there. We predefined a single record here called account to Upsert, and it's just an account record. Again, nothing too fancy. And then we're going to assign the values from those two inputs, the name and that external ID field, to the account to Upsert record variable that we defined that doesn't have a screen component to it. But we're kind of creating that container and setting the values on that account, and then we will upsert that into Salesforce. And then we do exactly that. We execute the upsert operation. And looking at this, there's really only 3 fields that need to be filled in. Before you do that, you do need to tell the flow what type of object you're currently working with. So in this case, we're working with account, so we do have to fill this in. And then you just define what the name of the external ID field is and the record that you are trying to upsert. We were doing a single record in this demo, but you can also insert a collection, or excuse me, upsert a collection of records as well. And so that's it. And then the final step, that like automagic navigation to the record, is done with another screen component, but we're dropping in a navigation component. So navigation, kind of like a bonus thing, it's not part of the release, it's been in the application since day one, is custom navigation to different records in Salesforce. So if I open this up, we're saying navigate to record, and what record are we navigating to? We pass in the ID that was returned from that upsert operation, and the type of navigation is a record because we want to go to a record. This navigation component also supports going to list views, going to tabs, but we want to go specifically to a record. So that's it. You say, I want to go to a record, give it the record ID, and it navigates to the record as soon as this page loads. So that is it. So there we go. We reviewed some of the features. Hope that was somewhat helpful, a little bit informal. I'm not going to edit this video. I'm going to keep it real, but hope these features are useful. And if you have any other ideas or thoughts for improvement, feel free to get a hold of me. We'll deliver as many of these features as we can. I really want this to be the go-to solution for all things Flow. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.